Okay. All right, welcome to the 2015 Intermountain CFC application training. My name is Bruce Jacobs. I'm the Executive Director for the Intermountain Combined Federal Campaign. Hopefully you can all see my screen. I'm going to go ahead and turn it to slideshow. But I will from time to time exit out of these slides and take you to the CFC website because there are some links there that I want to show you as we progress through today's training. If you have any questions, feel free to pipe up. I'll try to keep an eye on the screen to the right as well if you type them in, but I may not be as quick to see those. Also, if you want to jot down your questions, you can ask them at the end of the presentation if you prefer to do it that way, or you can always email me or call me afterwards, and I'll be happy to follow up and answer any questions that you may have. So today, we want to make sure everybody understands what the Combined Federal Campaign is, how it works, walk you through the process for how to apply, and then we'd like to get your feedback on if you participated in the past, how you feel the campaign's running, anything that we can do to better serve you. So let's go ahead and move forward. Just a little CFC 101 really quick. It is the only authorized way of soliciting funds from federal government employees. This is not, when you apply to the CFC, it's not the same thing as applying for a grant. Basically what you're doing is applying to be listed in the 2015 charity list of official nonprofits that federal employees can choose to designate to. So in the fall, we run the campaign, and they have the opportunity as individual federal employees to pick their favorite charities, the ones that they would like to support financially, and they can choose to support you by cash check, credit card, or payroll deduction. And the majority of our donors choose payroll deduction, and that ends up benefiting them and you more in the long run because our results show that the payroll deduction usually ends up in a larger gift. There are currently about 150 CFC territories across the United States. We're one of those. The CFC bills itself as the largest workplace giving campaign anywhere in the world. Each year it raises well over $200 million for nonprofit organizations. All of that, once again, is 100% donor-driven. So the donors are the ones who are choosing the charities. They choose how much they want to give and what method they would like to give. And the campaign primarily runs, it's volunteer-powered. So we've got many, many volunteers out there throughout our federal agencies in the Intermountain region who are volunteering some time in the workplace each fall to run this campaign internally, encourage their coworkers to support charities through the CFC. And before I move on, are there any questions about the CFC and how it works? We're going to go.
So I work for the government. Would I be able to volunteer for the CFC campaign stuff and also be representing the charity that I'm going to sign up for, or no?
Well, no, not simultaneously.
Okay.
You'd have to. I'd recommend that you talk internally to your agency ethics officer.
Okay.
That would probably prove a conflict of interest. So I'd recommend that you just do one or the other, but not both.
Okay.
Good question. This is just a quick slide showing the kind of the structure of the CFC. The Office of Personnel Management, or OPM, that's the governing body within the government that oversees this campaign. They do not take a cut of the proceeds. They're there just to make sure that each campaign is operating in accordance with the regulations. And then here, the local federal coordinating committee, you can think of this as sort of the executive board for the Intermountain Combined Federal Campaign. So this group is comprised of volunteers from local federal agencies who oversee our local campaign. So they set the budget for the Intermountain CFC. They approve the campaign plans, and they oversee the disbursements and the charity application process. So we have members from this committee who will sit on the eligibility committee, the group that will evaluate the applications that you fill out to participate in the CFC this fall. On the left here is a group called the Principal Combined Fund Organization. You don't need to remember that, but it's the nonprofit organization that sort of volunteers to be the behind-the-scenes administrator of the campaign. And this is who I work for. Currently, Intermountain CFC, the PCFO, is United Way of Northern Utah. And every CFC throughout the nation has to partner with a local nonprofit to serve in this capacity. Otherwise, federal contributions from employees would not be tax deductible. So they flow through a nonprofit so that your donations are tax deductible. United Way does not charge a fee to serve in this role. We do pay for the costs of the campaign, so printing the charity list, the pledge forms, the website, the online giving tools, and all the marketing, everything we do to reach out to federal employees and try to encourage them to give. There are costs associated with that, and those costs are reimbursed from the funds that are raised in the campaign, but beyond that, we do not charge a single penny in fees to administer the CFC. So that begs the question then, what percentage then of the campaign costs, or of the campaign, of the dollars raised, how much goes to costs? And typically that has been around 10%. It just varies year to year depending on, primarily on how much money we're able to raise and what our costs are. I'll tell you the last few years our actual dollar costs have gone down significantly, but we've also had a drop-off in total amount raised, so the percentage has been about 10% the last couple of years, and before that it was hovering around 7.5%, 8%. And then over here, of course, you are the local, national, international charities that participate in the CFC. There are over 21,000 of you that are eligible to receive gifts from federal employees. Excuse me. And you're really the reason why we run this campaign, to give local federal employees the opportunity to support your organizations. This is just a quick map showing the territory of Intermountain CFC. We cover all of the state of Utah, just about all of southern Idaho, including one county here in Oregon, Malheur County. We cover just about all of Wyoming with the exception of 3 counties. And then we cover the western third of Colorado as well. We reach out to about 55,000 federal employees that work in this red territory here. All CFC charities are and must be 501c3 public charities recognized by the IRS as providing human health and welfare services. If you're taking notes, this is one thing I would like you to write down. You do have to apply each year in order to be listed in the CFC campaign. So it's not a one-and-done thing. You do have to come back next year and fill out the same application, go through the same process. And as long as you continue to be approved, you'll be listed in that fall's CFC charity list. So just make sure that you mark your calendars to come back next January and get ready to fill out your application again. Okay, this is just a quick overview of the annual CFC cycle. This is the time of year between January and March when our local charities apply. We then review those applications in early April, and you'll receive a notification that you have been accepted or denied, as the case may be. And then in the summer, we prepare all the marketing materials, including the charity list, and you're included in that list. That list is both a hard copy that we produce and as well as a searchable database that you can search on our website to find those nonprofits. And then in the fall, between September 1st and December 15th, federal employee volunteers promote the campaign within their federal agencies, and they have the opportunity to give to your organization. So those donors select you, and then the distribution of the money we raise in the fall, the distribution of that money begins in April of the following calendar year. So the campaign we just ran this last fall, 2014, will begin to disperse those funds beginning April 1st of 2015, and then quarterly thereafter until all the money has come in and then been dispersed. Also, after this process takes place, in about mid-March of the following calendar year, we do send all the organizations that received or were selected by federal employees, we send you a spreadsheet letting you know how much was raised for your organization, as well as the names of any donors who authorized us by filling out a box on the pledge form to release their name and how much they gave to you. Okay, there are three main types of application to the CFC. Just about everybody, I'm pretty sure everybody on this call will be using the first type here, called the application for local independent organizations or members of a federation. So this is when you have your own, pretty much you have your own 501c3 letter from the IRS, or you're an affiliate of a national organization, perhaps a local affiliate of a national. Just about all of you are going to use this application. The federation application would be used only if you are a nonprofit, such as a United Way or a Community Shares, Community Health Charities, an organization that has 15 or more related member nonprofits under your wing. In that case, you apply once, and your members apply to you, but they also use this local independent application. So only about 10 or 11 charities within our campaign territory are actually going to fill out this option number 2. And this option number 3 pertains to only those nonprofits that operate on a military installation, and I don't believe that applies to anybody on the call today. So we're going to really focus on this application type 1 today as we go through the training. Okay, before I dive into that, do I have any questions of what's been covered so far? Okay, I'm going to move on. All right, so how do you find the application to apply? So I'm going to leave the slides for just a moment, and hopefully you've been here already, but if you will go to intermountaincfc.org, then you're going to select this menu item for charities and click on Applications and Instructions. That's the page where we currently are. You scroll down, and where it says in big red type, local independent organizations, as well as members of federations, you're going to click on this 2015 local independent application. And that's going to pull up a document that looks like this. This is actually starts on page 8. Everything page 1 through 8, these are the instructions that take you through, which of these boxes to check, how to fill out this application. But we're going to cover that today on the call. So you're going to start filling out this application on page 8. So I'm going to refer back to this, but I just wanted to let you know where you can download it if you haven't already. If that doesn't work for you, send me an email and I'll be happy to reply and send it as an attachment. Okay, these are the kind of the basic minimum requirements to participate in the CFC. Again, you have to be a 501c3. I would really recommend, even if you're very confident on that, obviously you are a 501c3, but sometimes you may have fallen off the IRS's, what they call the business master file of nonprofits. And that can happen for a multitude of reasons, one of it which is if you have moved your location in the past year. If the IRS ever sends you a letter and then it's returned to them, they are automatically going to remove you off this master file. And this is important because even if your application is accepted by our local committee, everything is double-checked against the IRS master file of 501c3s. So if we accept you and then it turns out we do that double check and the IRS says, no, they're not on the list, then your name would automatically be yanked out of the campaign. So you really don't want that happening. I just recommend as a best practice once a year, maybe at CFC application time, you call the IRS at this number and just verify that they've got you on their business master file of 501c3s. It only takes, I don't know how long. You may have to wait on hold for a minute, but it's not going to take you too much time, and it could really save you a headache later on down the road. Your organization has to be what they call sort of open for business, a minimum of 15 hours per week. So you're actively delivering services at least 15 hours during the week, and you've got a location somewhere where somebody who wants to receive services can come and find you and visit with you or set up a meeting with you. So you've got to have that sort of open for business, open door, at least 15 hours of every work week. You do need to have a dedicated phone line specifically for your organization, as well as a physical address. Now the phone line, it can be a cell phone. That's fine. But it can't be your personal cell phone that doubles as your work phone. So if your organization does, I understand that some of you are out on the road a lot, and if you're using cell phones, that's fine. You just have to make sure that it's dedicated solely for the use of the organization. You also have to either submit a Form 990 to the IRS. Now, not every 501c3 is required to submit a 990 to the IRS, and if that applies to you, then for the purposes of the CFC application, we require that you fill out what we call a pro forma 990. So you take the regular 990 form, you just hit irs.gov. Someone joined. Who's just joined?
Hi, yes, this is the Mahoney House in Salmon, Idaho.
Okay. And sorry, I didn't catch the name.
Rebecca.
Rebecca. Okay. Okay, thanks for joining.
Thanks.
All right. I'll show you a little bit more about how to fill out a pro forma 990 if that is going to apply to your organization. Also, if on your recent pro forma your 990 or last year, if your organization reported over $100,000 in revenue raised, then it's a CFC requirement that you do have to undergo a full audit by an independent certified public accountant, and the audit has to be in conformance with GAAP and GAAS, which stands for Generally Accepted Accounting Principles and Generally Accepted Auditing Standards used in the United States. And you have to show that you use the accrual method of accounting. Again, this is only if your organization has over $100,000 in revenue. If you're less than that, then these requirements do not apply. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. Okay, so the deadline to apply, this is another thing that I would recommend you write down if you're taking notes today. Make sure that your application arrives in our office no later than March 25th. If you're a member of a federation, and you know that organization is going to apply to the CFC, then they may require an earlier deadline for you to submit your CFC application to them. A federation being an umbrella charity, sort of like United Way, Community Shares, Community Health Charities. I'm not sure if that applies to anybody here currently on the call, but if it does, check with them and find out what the internal application deadline is. By the 30th of April, our LFCC will notify your organization of our eligibility decision, so whether you're in or out. And then if if for some reason you're denied, you have 14 days from the time we mail that letter to respond and send in an appeal if you choose to appeal. This is the minority of cases, so it's not likely to apply. More than likely, if as you're filling out this application, you'll realize that for one reason or another you may not be eligible, and you can always withdraw. By June 4th, we have to make a decision locally on whether or not to accept your appeal. If you're still denied, you can appeal to OPM, and their target date for completing all appeals is July 31st. Again, that's probably more than likely by April 30th you'll have a decision one way or another from us, and that will more than likely be that you're accepted. Okay, there are, in addition to filling out the main application, there are 5 attachments, and at least 4 of them are going to be required. So we're going to talk a little bit about these attachments. The first one is Attachment A, and this is a schedule of services that your organization delivered in calendar year 2014. So regardless of what your fiscal year is in terms of your audit or your 990, this Attachment A needs to reflect the services that your organization delivered in the calendar year 2014. And what we're looking for here is not what your organization offers on an ongoing basis. We would like to see data in terms of what you actually accomplished last year. So how many people did you help? Let's say you're a homeless shelter. We would like to know how many individuals and families were housed at your homeless shelter, how many meals did you provide, how many volunteers and volunteer hours went into providing those services, where and how were they delivered. So we kind of really would like to get into the meat and potatoes of what you actually accomplished last year. Because the number one mistake people make on this application, Attachment A, is that they'll give us a narrative or a description of this is what our organization does and this is what we offer. And that's not what the committee is looking for. They want to know what you did and what you accomplished. So to fill out your Attachment A, I really strongly recommend that you use the template we provide at intermountaincfc.org. Again, on the same page, for charities, applications, and instructions, if you click right underneath the local independent application, click on Attachment A template, that will download a document that will walk you through how to fill out this Attachment A. It includes 2 different options for filling it out. So if you will simply download this document, it's a Word document, and then you can start typing in your organization's name here, your address, phone number, the hours of operation, and then you can just start filling out this table, where the services were delivered, when they were delivered, and a description of the numbers of people that you helped. That will, and it doesn't have to be long. It really doesn't even have to be more than a page. It will satisfy the requirements of Attachment A, and you'll know that you did it right and that we won't have to come back to you and ask for more details. Attachment E is simply a copy of your IRS determination letter. So it's a letter from the IRS whenever they sent it to you, and it could have been several years ago, saying it names your organization and it says we recognize you as a 501c3 nonprofit. So most of you, I'm sure, are familiar with what this letter is and what it looks like. There is no deadline, or excuse me, there's no date on it in terms of, it could be dated. There's no expiration date. That's what I'm trying to say. It could be dated 1959, and that letter is still good. as long as the name on the letter still matches the name that you're applying under, and the address is the same and everything, then it's still valid. If you don't have a copy of this letter, again, get in touch with the IRS right away and ask them to send you, and what they'll send you is a validation letter, basically saying, yes, you're still recognized by the IRS as a 501c3 public charity. So we just want to see a copy of that as your attachment B. Attachment C, if your organization, again, if your revenues are greater than $100,000, you have to certify and check a box on the application that says that you do undergo an audit by an independent certified public accountant. But for some reason, known only to OPM, you don't actually have to provide a copy of that audit unless your revenues are greater than $250,000. So just to clarify, if you're over $100,000, you have to have one. If you're over $250,000, you also have to submit it as part of your CFC application, labeled Attachment C. And while I'm on the subject of attachments, please put the attachments at the end of the application. Don't insert them into the pages right after the page where it says, where it names the attachment you have to provide. Sometimes charities will do that. It's actually easier for us if you just give us the application, and then at the end we see attachment A followed by attachment B followed by attachment C and so forth. Okay, attachment D, again, is a copy of your IRS Form 990. The number one mistake we see on this, first of all, is that it is not signed. Sometimes, though, there will be a signature of the auditor or the person who prepared it on the second line, but what we really need to see on that first line, right on page 1, is a signature of an officer of your organization. Now, if you filed it electronically, the IRS has you submit, I can't remember the name, the EEO 870 or something like that. It's a form that you turn it in when you file it electronically. And as long as you provide that page with the signature on that page, we will accept that in place of a signature on page 1 of the 990. But just to make it easier for us, the best thing to do is make sure that somebody signs it before you send it in. Attachment E is a 25-word statement that describes what your organization does. And this is the statement we will publish in our charity list along with your name, so that as donors are going through the list of charities they want to support, they have at least 25 words from you explaining who you are and what you do. I'm going to go ahead and leave the slides for just a moment, take you back to our website where you can download the attachment A. You can get a template also for attachment E at our website. If you download this and open it up, it'll have a place for you to fill out right here, 25-word statement, and then kind of a description of what we're looking for. In addition, the CFC, rather, would like each of you to pick 3 taxonomy codes that relate to your organization. Those codes are all listed here at the bottom, and you'll see that from A to Z, there are different categories of charities. So if you'll pick 3 that best apply to what you do, so if I'm an animal shelter, then I'm going to definitely put, D as my first taxonomy code here. But there might be 1 or 2 others that kind of apply to what I'm doing. And the reason you want to do this is that many of our donors search online for charities, and sometimes they search by category rather than by name. So they might put in category M, saying, hey, show me all the local public safety and disaster organizations. And then a list of all those charities that put M on their attachment E would then pop up. So if you don't fill this out, then there's less chance that they may be able to find you as they're searching. Hopefully that makes sense. Any questions on what I've covered on the attachments?
Yeah, so we will be opening February 7th. So for the attachment A, do we just put not applicable or something, or?
Oh, so you don't have services delivered in calendar year 2014?
No.
I'm trying to remember. I'll have to ask that question from OPM if you can apply, if they waive the requirement for in that case, or if they may actually, you may have to wait until 2016 to apply. And I wish I could remember off the top of my head. But if you'll please, I'm going to make a note of this, but if you'll also follow up with me after the call, maybe send me an email, I will revisit that question and let you know, because I think, but I may be wrong, I think that you may have to wait until the following year to apply so you can show those services delivered. If not, though, that requirement may be waived in your case.
Okay, thanks.
Make a note.
Yep.
Okay. Anyway, don't drop off the call. So just in case you're still eligible, and then of course it's good to know for next year.
Yeah.
This last bullet, we will be getting in touch with you about this. But another thing that we're part of a pilot program that about a dozen CFCs across the country are running this program called the Charity Auto Response Element. And this gives you an opportunity to send more than a 25-word statement to submit up to 1,000 characters, more information about your organization and what you intend to do with CFC contributions, so that after a donor selects you, they receive an email confirmation, and part of that email confirmation would contain the statement that you pre-provided to us, thanking the donor and giving them a little bit more information about what you do and how you intend to use their donation. So it's intended to kind of build a better connection between you and the donors who support you. So we'll be giving you information after you're accepted. We'll be sending you some information about how to submit your care statement. So you don't have to do that to apply, but I just wanted to make you aware that that would be coming after you're accepted. So here are some of the most frequent mistakes that we see as applications come in. First of all, that at the end of the application itself, you forget to sign it, so make sure you're double checking that. Sometimes the attachments are incorrect. A very common one is that if your organization isn't required to submit a full 990 to the IRS, but you did submit a 990 EZ, you may not substitute the EZ in place of the pro forma 990. So if that's the case, you have to fill out a pro forma IRS Form 990, and I will be explaining more about how to do that later on in this presentation, so don't despair. It's not as hard as it sounds, so just want to put your mind at ease there. But you have to fill out the same. It's just basically taking elements of what's from your 990 EZ and putting them on certain pages of the long form. You don't have to do the long form. If you have over $100,000 in revenue, and a full audit is required, at least this year. Next year, that requirement may change. There's been some talk about raising the threshold, but that doesn't apply to 2015. So if you had a review by an auditor, unfortunately, we cannot accept a review in place of a full audit if your revenues are over $100,000. Again, if they're lower than that, then neither of those would be required. Your 990 not being signed by an officer, I mentioned that already. AFR stands for Administrative and Fundraising Rate. On item 7 of the application, it will be asking you to state what that rate is, and you calculate your administrative and fundraising rate by using certain sections of the data you provided on your IRS Form 990. And the application walks you through how to complete that calculation and fill it in, and that's item 7 of the CFC application. So we'll be revisiting that in just a moment. Not being able to show local presence through the services that you delivered last year in 2014. So as you fill out your attachment A, if the committee feels that you didn't meet that requirement, satisfy that requirement by documenting real services delivered in 2014, that might be grounds for denial. And voting members of the board, this is something that you have to show on your Form 990, whether it's the long form or whether it's the pro forma version. There's a page on the 990 where you list the members of your board, and a majority of those members, the 990 has to show that a majority of those members do not receive any compensation from your organization, so showing that there's basically no conflict of interest there. Now, we're still going to take you step by step through the process, so don't worry. But in the meantime, once you're accepted into the CFC, this is just a slide to give you an idea of how to maximize your CFC contributions. So there's one thing you cannot do is you can't knock on the door of a federal agency and ask to come in and speak to their employees. That's why they run this campaign, so that they can avoid multiple solicitations in the workplace. However, you may be invited to participate in a CFC kickoff event. So each of our federal agencies, most of them will have a kind of a beginning rally to start the campaign at their agency. And they're allowed to invite a nonprofit or 2 or 3, depending on how big they are, to come to that meeting and speak or talk a little bit about the services that you deliver as an example of nonprofits that federal employees can choose. So if you know a federal employee, you may want to plant a bug in their ear that you're willing and able to come and speak in that capacity. We also have some CFC, Intermountain CFC sponsored kickoff events that we open up the doors, and it's basically first come, first serve. We typically do one in northern Utah, for example, on Hill Air Force Base, and we invite up to 50 nonprofits to attend a big charity fair. So that's a good opportunity to get your name out there. You're welcome to use your own publications, your own marketing materials like your website and social media accounts to market and promote your CFC affiliation. So obviously, we can't tell you what to put on your own website or in your own pamphlets and stuff. You just can't send those items to a federal agency unsolicited. We do have some decals that say, hey, we're a CFC approved charity. They're adhesive, so you can put them in the window of your lobby or something. If you'd like one of those, just send me an email. However, please don't put it up until you've actually been approved. And then, of course, you're encouraged to send a thank you to the federal employees who do release their name and contact information by filling out the pledge form. So not all of our donors do this. A lot of them like to remain anonymous. But those who do, they would probably like to receive a thank you from you. It doesn't mean that they want to continue to receive solicitations. That's why they give through the CFC. But it's a good idea to obviously thank your donors. Okay, so we're going to get more into the meat and potatoes of the application instructions here. Just a little humor here. Make sure you fill out this application correctly. Okay, I'm going to kind of toggle back and forth between the slides here and the actual application. So I'm going to take you to the local independent application. So the first thing, of course, is to, let me close that out, is to fill out this section on page 1 with your name. When you put your organization name here, please be sure it's an exact match with what's actually on your IRS determination letter and your audit, if you have to provide an audit, and your 990. Those names should all match. And if they don't, then we need you to provide what's called a doing business as document from the state, a DBA form that says that your legal entity is authorized to do business under a different name. So we'll come to that again in just a minute. Then you just fill out your address. It has to be a physical street address on this line. Your contact information. If you'd like your funds distributed to you electronically, then you need to fill out this section here. And then we'll start with item 1 of the application. So you check this box, and there's only one option, to certify that your organization is local. You're within the Intermountain CFC territory, that you're open for at least 15 hours a week, as we talked about, with a dedicated phone line. And then you fill out, on this section here, your service office address, if it's different from what you already put on page 8 here. And then the hours of operation. This is where you're showing that your organization is open for business at least 15 hours a week and what those days are. Then here you put the number, your organization's dedicated phone number, and then the county and state. Because we do cover more than just Utah, so this might be, Lemhi County, Idaho, or Davis County, Utah, wherever. So that's item 1. And then going along with item 1, again, is attachment A. And we've already talked about what this is and how to fill it out, so I'm not going to belabor that point. But again, I recommend you use the template that we provide at our website to fill out your attachment A, which accompanies item 1 of the application. The next item, item 2, you simply check the box here, certifying that you're recognized by the IRS as a 501c3 organization, and then at the end of the application, you provide a copy of that letter as attachment B. Okay, application item 3 now. There are 3 options to this one. So this is the first time where you actually have to choose between which box you're going to check. And you can only check one of them. The most common one is that you certify that your organization is not part of a group exemption. So you've got your own letter with your own name from the IRS saying, I recognize this organization as a 501c3. So probably a majority of you are going to be selecting this first box under item 3. But then there are 2 other options. You might be, for example, part of a group exemption. And the example that comes to mind here is, say, a Salvation Army, where you've got a group exemption recognized by the IRS where they recognize all the different Salvation Army locations across the United States as being part of this big group of charities with the same name that are part of this group exemption. And if that's the case, then your name may not be unique because many different organizations obviously use Salvation Army as their name. Your employee identification number is listed in the IRS Business Master File, but it's the same number as all the others, or at least in your territory. But there's a 4-digit on that letter. You do have to provide the letter to the parent organization, and there's usually a 4-digit group code on that letter. So when you provide your attachment B, it's always a good idea to take a highlighter and highlight that 4-digit group exemption. And then you've got to provide a list of all the subordinates that are under this group exemption, the full list of all the organizations that are recognized by the IRS as being covered by this group exemption, and then find the page where your particular chapter or local organization is listed on that list and highlight it for us. So you're going to provide, if you're selecting the second option, group exemption, you're going to provide the IRS letter naming the group. You're going to highlight the 4-digit code, and then you're going to provide a listing of all the subordinates, and you're going to either dog-ear or highlight or make it easy for our eligibility team to find your local chapter or group or name on this group. And then finally, the final option here is that you certify that you are a bona fide local chapter or affiliate that operates under a national organization's single tax exemption. So maybe you're a local chapter of the American Red Cross or a local chapter of the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society or whatever it may be. And in this case, you have to provide a copy of the IRS letter to the headquarters organization saying that the national organization is recognized as 501c3. And then you also need to get a letter dated October 1st, 2014 or after. So if it's dated this year, you're covered. The letter needs to be from either the CEO or equivalent at the national organization, and that letter should name your local chapter as being falling under their employee identification number, and that you're covered by their national organization's audit and so forth. So a lot of times this is a form letter, and then they also provide a full listing of subordinates, and if that's the case, it's fine as long as your name is on that listing of local chapters. So I know that can all be a little bit confusing. Probably most of you, you're just going to be checking the first box anyway, but if you have any questions on that, you can speak up now or you can contact me after. Okay. All right, I'm going to move on to item 4. See if there's any questions online here. Nope. Okay, so the next item, item 4 on page 9, you simply check the box that your organization is a human health and welfare organization providing services, benefits, assistance to blah, 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 and affecting human health and welfare. Now, we do accept animal organizations, so don't get too caught up on the human health and welfare verbiage, but your attachment A in that case should also demonstrate how your services, that you're helping animals also has an impact on human health and welfare. And that's a very easy connection to make. Let's say you're an animal adoption agency. Obviously, you're not only benefiting animals, but you're benefiting humans because animals have a clear impact on the health and welfare of human beings because of that symbiotic relationship. So that's not going to be a hard connection for you to make, but it's always a good idea for you to go ahead and state how your services do affect human life. Okay, moving on to item 5. You'll find this on pages 11 and 12 of the application. Again, here you have 3 options to select from. So I'm going to go to item 5. Starts on page 9. I said 11, so I guess I have to update the numbers. I'm sorry. But on page 9 of the application, box item 5, the first box is if your organization has revenues that meet or exceed $250,000, then you check this box, and for attachment C, you have to provide a copy of the audit that you underwent. And that audit has to be, the date of that audit has to have a fiscal period ending no earlier than, in this case, June 30th, 2013, which is 18 months prior to January 2015. So the date you need to remember for the audit, and your 990 date has to match this, needs to be June 30th, 2013 or after. If it's before that date, we won't be able to accept it. The next option then is if your organization's revenues are between $100,000 and $250,000, you still have to have the audit, but you do not have to provide it as attachment C. So in that case, you will not have an attachment C. You might want to stick in a letter or a page, that labeled attachment C, and then it just says not required per item 5 or something. Some organizations do that, or you can just skip it entirely. But when you move on to attachment D, please still call it attachment D. Don't call it attachment C. Okay, and then the third option, of course, under 5 is if your organization's revenue is less than $100,000, you simply check this box. You don't have to have an audit, and your accounting methods don't have to be accrual. Okay, item 6, there's 2 options here. You certify that your organization, let me go to the slides, actually. I think we covered all this. Okay, application item 6. You select the first option if your organization is required to submit a full Form 990 to the IRS, and then you have to provide that as attachment D. Again, it has to be signed. If you're using one of these electronic pages to submit it, that's okay, but just make sure that page is signed. Your attachment D on page 7, again, has to show that your board of directors, a majority of them, are not compensated. Now, the other option under item 6 is this is when your organization is not required by the IRS to submit a Form 990. A lot of religious organizations don't have to. A few others don't have to. But still, for the purposes of the CFC application, again, you have to submit a pro forma IRS Form 990. And the instructions for how to do that are in the instructions that come before this application. You'll find it. But just to make it easier for you, at our website, if you need to complete a pro forma 990, you can download it by clicking this link here, which takes you right to the IRS page where you can download the Form 990. But then also, if you'll click on this link that says Pro Forma 990, we've actually highlighted the specific sections that you have to complete in order to make this a pro forma. So you just write at the top, Pro Forma, right here. You fill out this section highlighted in yellow. One thing that you've got to make sure of, and this applies to everybody, whether it's a pro forma or not, the number of voting members that you list here on page 1 of the 990 has to be equal to or is it equal to or less than the number of people you actually show on page 7 here of the 990. So you're going to put down the names of the people on your board, and not only does the number of these people here have to be the same or more than what you put on page 1, line 3, but they have to have one of these first 2 boxes checked. They have to be either an individual trustee or director or an institutional trustee or director. So these need to be checked, and the number of people who have these boxes checked, again, has to be equal to or more than what you put on page 1, line 3. And then over here to the right, and again, this applies to everybody, not just the pro forma people, you have to put in what their compensation was. And if they didn't have compensation, which will probably be the case for all or the majority of them, you do actually have to put a 0 in each of these columns. Don't just put a line or leave it blank, because that won't be accepted. Now, the one exception to that is if nobody receives compensation and you go ahead and check this box here, then you wouldn't have to fill it all out here. So I'm just going to take you through You'll note that page 1, you fill out this yellow section. This, again, now we're talking again about just the pro forma people. Make sure it is signed. You then get to skip page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5, and 6. You go right to the Board of Directors information that we talked about. If you need to, you continue that on page 8. And then you stop after part 5 on this page. You then don't have to fill out this section. Page 9, you have to fill out your statement of revenues, and the number we're really looking for here is this total revenue number. And then you fill out the statement of functional expenses on page 10, and we're looking at these two numbers specifically. And this is going to help us do the calculation for your administrative and fundraising rate. You're going to do the same calculation to fill out item 7, which we'll cover in just a moment. But essentially, you're going to add these two numbers together and then divide it by your total revenue, and that will give you the administrative and fundraising rate that you're going to put in on item 7. Okay, then you get to skip another page and a half, and then the last thing you need to provide, for those of you who only have to provide a pro forma 990, would be to select your method of accounting. If your revenue is greater than $100,000, and this applies to everybody, then this accrual box needs to be checked, because if it's cash and you're over $100,000, then that would be grounds for denial. If you're under $100,000, then we don't even care what method is checked, but something needs to be checked here. So this document just shows exactly how to fill out a pro forma 990. So just provided there as a service to you. Okay, that's item 6. Item 7, let's move on. We already covered that. This slide, page 29, just lists everything I just showed you, those highlighted sections of the Form 990, so I'm not going to cover that again, but it's here on the slides, and you can download this presentation from our website. If you click on 2015 application training, this is exactly what we're going through here today. All right, moving on to item 7. This is only one option. You check the box under item 7 to certify what your administrative and fundraising rate is. And again, this is the calculation. I'm going to go back to the pro forma 990 just to show you. Oh, let's see here. I think I deleted it. I think I X'd it out, but I'm opening it up again. So going back to the 990, this is for all of you. You take these two numbers on on page 10 of your 990. You add line 25, column C, plus line 25, column D. So these two numbers added together, the sum of that divided by your total revenue on the previous page will give you the administrative and fundraising rate. Now, after you do that calculation, you're going to get a number with a great big long string of, a decimal point followed by a great big long string of numbers. So you've got to move the decimal point 2 places to the right in order to get the accurate AFR for item 7. So let's say that I did this calculation here. Where did it go again? I did this calculation, and the number turned out to be 0.10658. Then I would move the decimal point past the 10, so the total AFR would be 10.6 something. That I would put 10.6. You have to round it to the nearest 1/10 of a percent. If you have any questions on how to do that as you're filling it out, I'll be happy to help you, so just get in touch with me. Okay, now the good news is, everybody, because I know most of you are asleep by now, the good news is that the rest of the application is simply check the box. So let's see, we're going to go to item 8. This box, you're simply certifying that you do have an active and responsible governing body, your board of directors, with no material conflicts of interest. Item 9, you're certifying that you promise that you will not sell or lease the names of CFC contributors to any outside party for any reason. Item 10, you certify that basically what this is saying is that what you're doing on a day-to-day basis is actually in line with what you say you're doing. So you're not misrepresenting who you are and what you're doing. So you simply check that box. That, again, going along with that same one, item 11, you check the box to certify that you are going to do what you say you're going to do with money that you raise. You're not going to turn around and do something different with it. Item 12 is essentially that you promise that you're not aiding and abetting any terrorist groups with money that you're raising. And then finally, item 13, you sign the document and then you fill out attachment E, which I already talked about. And this is just one example of a 25-word statement. A Boise area nonprofit working since 1985 to help Treasure Valley families with housing, food, education, and spiritual needs. So this sentence, your 25-word statement, I do have to just underscore that it cannot exceed 25 words. And if it does, we're going to edit it for you because we don't have time to go back and forth with 700 different charities on paring down their statements. So make it 25 or less, or realize that we will take the liberty of editing it for you, and you don't want us to make a mistake on how you'd like that to appear. Okay, so how you submit this application. You've got the application filled out, you've got all those attachments, and now you've got a bundle of paper. You need to send it to us. So you download it here, you complete it, you sign it, and then you're going to mail it to the Intermountain CFC office closest to you. Now, probably most of you, that's going to be my office address, and I'll show you just a moment. We have to receive your application no later than March 25th. In other words, we really don't care when it was postmarked. If it doesn't arrive here by this date, it's late and it's subject to denial. Again, if you're participating as a member of a federation, then you send it to them by the deadline that they specify. We really cannot take emailed applications. Now, if something is missing and we ask you to send it in to us, that's where we'll make an exception where you can send it as an attachment. But please do not email all your files to us. We need them in the mail. So here are the, just a moment, here are the mailing addresses. Probably most of you are going to be sending it to me here at 2955 Harrison Boulevard, Suite 201. The exception to this is if your organization is located in the southwest Idaho area, so anything west of Twin Falls, including Twin Falls, you would mail your applications to Jonathan Kreutz at this address, 3100 South Vista in Boise. If your organization is in southeast Idaho, so anything east of Twin Falls, including Teton County, Wyoming, if you're in that county, then we'd like you to please mail your applications to Jan O'Gilvey. She's a volunteer who works with us at the U.S. Department of Energy, and she's got a local committee of people who will screen those applications. And if you're in southwest Colorado, in other words, you're in Dolores, Archuleta, La Plata, or Montezuma counties, you're going to mail those applications to this address. So, and all those addresses are also, these addresses are also listed down here at the Intermountain CFC charity webpage where you came to download your application and your attachments. Okay, we're just about done now, everyone. What questions do you have for me at this time that I may not have covered or something that didn't quite make sense? Anybody?
So Bruce, I have a couple questions. This is Michelle Leschke, but I don't think that they'll pertain to anybody else.
Okay, well just feel free to follow up with me, and that applies to anybody as you're going through it. Our goal is not to keep you out of the campaign. Our goal is to help you be eligible. So please don't hesitate to contact me as you're filling out your application, and I'll be happy to work with you and see what I can do to answer your questions and help you make sure your application is correct. One thing that we didn't cover that I really want to stress is we really want you to download this. Sorry, that was the wrong link. At the Intermountain CFC webpage, you're going to find this third link down called the 2015 Self Checklist. Please download that Word document, and you're going to see some more check boxes because we love making you check boxes. So just put your name and EIN, and this is going to walk you through just to make sure that you didn't miss any really important items in the application. So we would like you to please complete this document and check these boxes to make sure that you have everything that is needed, that your 990 is signed, and all the most common mistakes. If you will do this, even though it's an extra maybe 5 minutes of your time, it could really save you hours in the long run. So please do it because it's going to help to make sure that you filled out the application correctly the first time, and then we won't have to follow up with you and keep bugging you for things that are missing. So fill out this application, this checklist, and then put it on top of page 1 of your actual application. And then send those paper copies to us in the mail, and then you'll be sitting pretty. All right. I don't believe there are any federations on the call today, but if I'm wrong, if you're an umbrella charity with 15 or more CFC eligible groups in your wing, pipe up now. Otherwise, I'm going to skip the last 3 slides. I didn't think so. Okay. All right, everybody. I've talked to myself hoarse, but I really appreciate you joining today because it hopefully will save us all time in the long run. So if you have any questions, again, get in touch with me. Thanks for joining today, and I hope you have a great Tuesday.
Sorry, is it okay if I just stay on the line and ask a couple questions now? I don't care if other people listen. I just don't want to waste anyone's time.
That's fine. I'm going to stop recording now.